We're studying this book, The Gift of Struggle, and this is a really very powerful page here, page 92. He's talking about a catastrophic meeting to wake me up to reality. He said we were huddled in the conference room after we'd been going back and forth for months about a big financial bet that wouldn't show a return for years. We agreed the opportunity was obvious and demand would continue, but the leader who would live with the consequences felt he and I were miles apart. He voiced his concern, but he thought the CFO and I weren't listening and implied that we didn't trust his ability. When I spoke up to disagree, sharing my perspective and response, my CFO suddenly exploded at the leader I had challenged. Why don't you tell him he's wrong? You've already told me Bobby couldn't be more open to feedback. Who cares if he gets upset? We know he's going to get upset. He's asking us to tell him when he's wrong. And this, as a leader, as a teacher, as a parent, is the most important thing in life. You know, the most important thing in life is to know that you're wrong, right? Someone told me once, what are the three most important words in marriage? So the obvious answer is I love you. It's important. Use it at least 5 times a day. But there's three more important words, and that's I am wrong. My wife is from Rio de Janeiro. She's a wonderful person. Things in Rio are a lot different than New York, right? And she taught me one thing, to say I am wrong. And believe me, I used to think I was wrong like once a month. And then like after a few years of marriage, I realized I'm wrong once a week. You know, now after 30 years, I realize I'm wrong like every 5 minutes. Yeah. And wrong doesn't mean that you're radically wrong. Wrong could be a tiny drop off. But that tiny drop is the difference between success and failure. That tiny drop, that cutting edge that we can give. And the only way you get that is feedback from others. Yeah. If you're willing to listen to your spouse, who's probably a very wise person, yeah, if you're like someone like me, if you're willing to listen to your spouse and to hear the truth, yeah, like let's say your spouse says you just have a big mouth, you talk too much, you walk into a room and you're just talking and talking and talking. Myself, my wife tells me that pretty often, and she's right. I've just learned to be quiet, close my mouth. Okay, there's a time to talk and there's time to be quiet. Listen to other people. Listen to people who care about you, right? And if you're an honest person, like we spoke about honesty, then you'll accept feedback, you'll admit that you're wrong, and you'll be a better person and you'll have a happier life. This is really the way to go. This is really something very powerful. And he says here, every person in the room turned to look at me, waiting for a reaction. I froze, stricken by hearing the truth. I didn't know if I was more embarrassed or ashamed by how afraid they were to speak up. I flashed back to episodes when I reached, as my CFO described. I could still record their guarded faces, the same ones I was looking at now. I've been muzzling the team I most trust, a not for my gut, but I also had a finger on the trigger of my opinion. I'm very comfortable with silence, something I had heard from my father. So I forced it a bit longer than usual. I calmed down. Is it true? Are you afraid to tell me? The leader I had challenged looked at me. I'm not afraid of you. When you get mad, you know it's time to drop it. All I heard was yes. So that's it. Learn how to accept feedback. Learn to close your mouth. The Talmud says, why do we have 2 ears and 1 mouth? Because we have to listen twice as much as we talk, right? Use your ears more than your mouth. The Sefer Yetzirah, the great Kabbalistic work, says, right, we have three best friends, our 2 ears and our hearts, yeah, because our 2 ears listen and the heart processes, yeah. And who's our worst enemy? Says the Sefer Yetzirah, our worst enemy is our mouth, because it's just talking and talking and talking, right? Our sages tell us, Lo matzasi leguf tov shtika. I didn't find anything better than silence. Silence is golden, yeah. And the reason the Maharal explains is because when a person is talking, can't think. These two operations can't work at the same time. You can't think and talk. You can listen and think, but you can't talk and think. When you're talking, you're just blabbering and things, right? If you've thought it out, then your talk could be very effective. But if you're just talking, then you will not be saying words of wisdom. We have to learn how to listen. And this is really what Bobby teaches us. And this is really what's missing in this generation, the ability to listen carefully, right? If your kid comes up to tell you something, right? Don't tell him he's wrong. Don't tell him he's stupid. Listen to what he's saying. Listen to the words. And this is another very important that Bobby says here in this book, is that often when people speak to us, there's two things. There's what and there's why, right? There's what and there's why. And what they're saying is not necessarily why they're saying it. A lot of times people speak and the real message is masked behind their words. Really, they mean something completely different. We have to learn how to make that separation. how to split really listening to people, right? What we call active listening. Well, active listening means try to understand what they're saying. A woman once piped up in a class and she told me that her husband was having a problem with prayer. And I found out she was having problems with her marriage. It was a terrible, terrible marriage. She was being abused in an awful way, right? So we have to learn what is the real message, what's really being said. And for that, you have to listen, right? That's for the other people. For ourselves, we have to know and admit when you're wrong. Think about it. And as I said, I used to think it was once a month, and now I know it's once every 5 minutes. We're often wrong. We're human beings. Yeah. A great person told me you're allowed to make 5 small mistakes and 3 big mistakes every day. And understand that we'll make mistakes. We'll make a lot of mistakes in life. And you're allowed to make mistakes. It's praiseworthy to make mistakes. But learn from your errors, learn from your mistakes. And don't think that if we make a mistake, people will respect you. My great teacher of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, of blessed memory, right? His first job interview was at the Kol Torah Yeshiva. And he got up to say a class, and someone asked him a question. He says, I don't know, right? I don't know. Or maybe I was wrong. Yeah. And instead of not hiring, they hired him because they said that's what we're looking for. Someone could admit their mistakes. Someone could say they don't know. That is the most powerful tool that we have at our disposal to recognize that we're human beings, to recognize that we're imperfect. God is perfect. We're imperfect. We're imperfect people living in an imperfect world. We have to know and understand that and live that reality. We should be helped gracefully from everything we're doing to admit we're wrong and admit our mistakes.